Good morning, learners. My name once again is Mr. Pochilola. I'm inspired this morning to present to you a Form 3 chemistry lesson. In the Form 3 chemistry on a topic called nitrogen and its compounds. Remember, this is a topic that comes under the core element of inorganic chemistry or inorganic compounds, where you are supposed to look at nitrogen and its compounds, sulfur and its compounds, and the phosphorus and its compounds. So in today's lesson, we'll begin to look at nitrogen and its compounds, in which we are going to look at a number of aspects of the topic. This topic. So as usual, let us look at some of the objectives that we are required to achieve in this topic. So by the end of this topic, you should be able to describe the isolation of nitrogen from air. Okay. In other words, describe the process of separating the mixture of air. Remember that the air is a mixture comprising of nitrogen, which makes up the most abundant portion of 78%, oxygen, carbon dioxide, some noble gases, as well as water, or in form of vapor. So how can you isolate, like separate these components so that we extract nitrogen only from air? Describe the laboratory preparation of nitrogen, okay, and state its properties and uses. And then describe the laboratory preparation and state the properties and uses of oxides of nitrogen. All right, so these are some of the objectives which you need to achieve in this topic. All right, you will also be required to describe the laboratory preparation of ammonia and state its properties and uses. You should be able to explain the differences in chemical reactions of ammonia gas and its aqueous solution. Okay, aqueous solution is when the ammonia gas is dissolved in water. Remember, an aqueous solution is one in which water is a solvent. Right? You'll be required to describe the industrial manufacture of ammonia by a process known as Born-Haber process. So in other words, we are going to look at the Born-Haber process in this objective. And then you should be able to calculate the percentage of nitrogen in nitrogen contained in nitrogen containing compounds, such as a fertilizer, for example. Remember that nitrogen is a key mineral or nutrient in agriculture. So you shall need at some point to work out the percentage of nitrogen in a given compound. All right. You also be required to, sorry about that. Okay. You'll be required to describe the preparation and manufacture of nitric acid, and describe and explain the reactions of both dilute and concentrated nitric acid. Okay? You know the difference between dilute and concentrated. Dilute means water is added to the nitric acid. So when water is added to the acid, it makes it dilute. And the one in which there's no water added is called concentrated. State the uses of nitric acid. Okay. Identify the products formed when the different nitrates are heated. Explain the pollution effects of nitrogen compounds in the environment. All right. So those are the objectives which we needed to achieve in this topic. So we shall go in the order of the objectives. So content-wise, we'll begin by looking at isolation of nitrogen gas from air, where we are going to look at the isolation of nitrogen gas from air, both in the lab and industrially. So when that is fully covered, we shall go on to look at the laboratory preparation of nitrogen gas. So we are going to look at laboratory preparation of nitrogen gas, and then later look at the properties of nitrogen gas, such as inertness. Okay, at some point you learn that nitrogen is chemically inert, meaning it does not react with other substances so easily unless it is burned in air. And then we look at uses of nitrogen gas. Okay. And then we move on to look at oxides of nitrogen, such as nitrogen oxide, nitrogen 1 oxide, nitrogen 2 oxide, and the nitrogen 4 oxide, and the preparations of each one of them. We shall also look at the properties and uses of these oxides. And then we look at ammonia, okay, with respect to preparation, laboratory preparation, and the properties of ammonia gas. Relate method of collection to the properties of the gas. So how a gas is collected, remember, depends on its properties. Okay. We shall look at ammonia in relation to its solubility in water, reaction of aqueous ammonia with metals like cations. Remember, cations are positive metals, positive metal ions. Okay. And then we look at reactions of ammonia with air, especially oxygen, using a catalyst and without a catalyst, then copper oxide and the hydrogen chloride. Then we look at ammonia, manufacture of ammonia by Haber process. We shall emphasize on the optimum conditions, such as use of pressure, temperature, and the catalyst. We shall continue to look at ammonia respect to uses of ammonia, and then the manufacturer of fertilizers, who mentions various nitrogen-containing fertilizers such as sulfate, nitrogen, nitrates, and phosphates. Then the amount of nitrogen in various fertilizers. Then we look at nitric acid, where we're going to look at the laboratory preparation and manufacture of nitric acid. Still on the nitric acid, we shall look at reaction of dilute nitric acid with metals, carbonates, hydroxides, and oxides. And then we look at reaction of concentrated nitric acid as an oxidizing agent, and then with iron 2 solution, sulfur, and copper metal. Then we look at uses of nitric acid. Still content, we are going to look at action of heat on nitrates, the effects of heat on nitrates of sodium, potassium, copper, lead, and silver, then testing for nitrates. And then we look at pollution effects of nitrogen compounds in the environment. So, in short, these are the areas that we are going to look at in this topic, nitrogen and its compounds. So this was just an introduction highlighting the main areas of focus. All right, so for now, would like to go, and then we meet again in lesson number 2, where we are going now to tackle each of these aspects of nitrogen and its compounds in much detail. My name once again is Mr. Pochilola, wishing you a beautiful Sunday morning, expecting to see you again. Bye bye for now.